What's up, guys? Welcome to Boxing Decades, and I want to talk about Teofimo Lopez and his performance against Sandor Martin, but his performance in general. Before I get into that, let's go over the highlights of the fight. This was a 10-round super lightweight fight for the vacant WBO international title. This was Teofimo's 19th fight, and he faced off with Sandor Martin, who is a Spanish fighter who gained more notoriety, in the States at least, after his win over Mikey Garcia back in October of 21. Martin accepted this fight on a few weeks' notice after Lopez's original opponent, Jose Pedraza, dropped out due to illness. Martin had a record of 40-2 before coming into this fight with Teofimo, which makes it pretty competitive. The two met in New York City at Madison Square Garden, and the fight started off at a pretty good pace. Both fighters seemed sharp and feeling each other out, until Teofimo landed an accidental headbutt that gashed open Sandor Martin's nose. Sandor Martin brushed it off at the beginning of the second and ended up knocking down Teo. The middle rounds were fairly evenly matched, but I would give the edge to Teofimo because he was walking Martin down and landing the harder shots. Martin seemed to be on defense most of those rounds. He did land some really good counterpunches, but I just don't think it was enough of an attack strategy to be considered a win. In the beginning of the 7th round, it looks like Teofimo went down, and I've seen a lot of people argue about this online of whether Teofimo actually got knocked down and the ref didn't count it. In my opinion, it wasn't a knockdown. I've watched it a few times over and over again, even in slow motion. It literally looks like Teofimo threw himself off balance and also tripped over Sandor Martin's leg. So I don't count that as a knockdown. The rest of the fight continued to be pretty close, but I still give the edge to Teofimo. I've also seen a good amount of people online say that Sandor Martin was robbed of this fight, that he should have won against Teofimo. Now, I agree that Teofimo did not do as good as he should have, or he didn't really do that great, which I'll talk about later in the video. But I still don't think that Sandor Martin threw enough punches to actually win this fight. I thought he fought well, but he was constantly on his back foot. Teofimo was constantly moving him backwards. Teofimo was the aggressor in the fight. Sandor Martin wasn't throwing enough punches, and not enough hard punches too. He was just taking whatever Teofimo was bringing and acting sort of defensively. Looking at the CompuBox stats, you can clearly see that Teofimo threw more punches, more harder punches, and he landed more. So I do think that Teofimo still deserves the win. However, something seems off with Teofimo. It's either that he's losing his boxing ability, which I don't think that's it because he's 25 years old. He shouldn't be losing any sort of skill at this point. So the only other reason that it could be is that he's not training hard enough. He's not putting enough effort into his training camps, and he's maybe coming into this fight with a big head because he beat Lomachenko, and he thinks that he's better than he is, and he doesn't need to train for it. I think it's a complicated situation of whether Teofimo actually has the skill to be a top-tier fighter, which I do believe he possesses. I think he showed that when he beat Lomachenko, but that doesn't mean you get to just stay the same. I mean, you should be improving. If you're a world-class fighter or a top-tier fighter, you should be getting better with every fight. Even if you lose, you should be learning from that loss and coming back to the next fight even better. So peak Teofimo was against Lomachenko, at least in my book. That's when I really started paying attention to Teofimo Lopez, because at the time, beating Lomachenko, to me, was a pretty big deal. And then we saw him face off with George Kambosos. That's the fight where I think we saw either Teofimo being exposed or just lack of training, whatever it was, but Kambosos took the fight to him and ended up ruining his perfect record. And I'm not taking away the skills of George Kambosos. He's an awesome fighter. Kambosos really picked Teofimo Lopez apart, and it was a great fight. I think Teofimo really messed up when he was really trying to focus on getting the knockout. I know before that fight he said that if you're a fan of his, bet on the first round knockout from Lopez. Obviously that was a terrible fucking choice. I'm hoping nobody actually made that bet, because in that first round, Lopez gets knocked down by Kambosos. And I think Teofimo's strategy was messed up from the beginning. You shouldn't be going into a fight focusing on a knockout. I mean, it's one thing to pick shots and try and outbox and then try and find the opening for the hard punch to land that knockout or to land that knockout punch. But to go through the fight saying that you're going to knock somebody out and watching the fight, seeing how Teofimo was throwing all these hard punches, it was getting pretty sloppy towards a point. It's just not the best strategy. So I don't think his head was in the right place. And in the 10th round, Teofimo ended up scoring a knockdown against Kambosos. But in the end, we know how this fight turned out. Kambosos ended up being the victor and the better man in this fight. So there's a few reasons why this happened. Number one, I'm just going to say this as it is, maybe Kambosos, or he probably is, a better boxer than Teofimo Lopez. And I think that's currently definitely what's going on. Kambosos versus Teofimo Lopez currently beats Lopez again. But coming from the Loma fight into the Kambosos fight, I guess at least I was expecting more out of Teofimo Lopez. And it could be the fact that maybe the Loma fight got into his head and he didn't train hard enough, or he was just being lazy and didn't train hard enough. Or it could also be the case that Kambosos just trained his ass off and came to win this fight like a true champion. And that's maybe where we're seeing the skill level change. Moving on to his fight with Campa, Teofimo won that fight as well. He ended up winning by TKO in the 7th round. Teofimo did well in that fight, but I'm not viewing that fight as like it's an amazing win for Teofimo Lopez because he got the TKO in the 7th round. Campa's a good fighter. I wouldn't consider him a top tier fighter. This fight almost seemed like a rebound fight to me for Teofimo Lopez to get some of his confidence back. So he should have won. If Teofimo Lopez is a top-tier fighter, if he is actually a world-class fighter, then he should have won by TKO at least, right? Or he should have won in some sort of spectacular fashion. He should have picked apart Pedro Campa. In this fight, you could really see that Teofimo found his groove in the middle rounds. And in the 7th, he was moving well. He was dodging punches while delivering devastating punches. He dropped Pedro once in the round and spent the rest of the round putting a beat down on Pedro until the ref stopped the fight. So I consider this win over Campa an uptick. So we have the Loma fight, we got the Kambosos fight, now we have the Campa fight, onto the Martin fight. Now I'm probably reiterating this here, but I agree that Teofimo Lopez did not do amazing in this fight against Sandor Martin. But I don't agree with other comments or boxing pundits, you can call it, saying that Sandor Martin won this fight and Teofimo Lopez robbed him of this win. I don't agree with that. I think other than the knockdown in the beginning of the fight from Sandor Martin, Teofimo controlled the pace of this entire fight. He walked down Sandor Martin, he threw more punches, landed harder shots, and Sandor Martin was on defense most of the fight. He was on his back foot, he was constantly moving back, so I would give the edge to Teofimo Lopez. So I believe that Teofimo Lopez won this fight, and I want to make that clear. But the other part that I want to stress is that I'm not happy with his performance, and I don't think he performed well at all. If that was the case, if he performed well, then there wouldn't be an argument online or between pundits saying that Sandor Martin was robbed of this victory. And maybe Sandor Martin is better than what people are giving him credit for, myself included. But if we're looking at the progression of Teofimo's fights, back to the ticks, we got Lomachenko, Kambosos, Campa, and then Sandor Martin. I count that as a down tick. And when you're at a top tier level, like I was saying before, it shouldn't be like this. You should be learning from your mistakes in the loss of, from Kambosos, and you should be getting better each fight. He should have had a progression where, okay, maybe he won against Loma, lost against Kambosos. Maybe that was just bound to happen because maybe Kambosos, and currently I believe this, that Kambosos is the better fighter. But then it should have been in Campa. He should have did as well as he did against Campa, if not better. And then Sandor Martin, he should have also improved in some way, shape, or form. But it seems like he's just not there. And I have to believe that whether he possesses the skill to be a top-tier fighter, he may. But if he doesn't, then obviously he's being exposed. If he does have the quality of a top-tier fighter, then he's not training hard enough. Something is going on with Teofimo Lopez where he's not putting in enough effort, or maybe he just doesn't care. Maybe he's cocky. But that's not a world-class fighter. That's not world-class fighter behavior. And I think Teofimo Lopez is a very talented guy, but like I said, I have not seen him improve from fight to fight to fight. And that's sort of what you would expect from somebody who is a top-tier fighter. But all in all, I hope he starts taking his training seriously. If not, I think he's going to keep getting exposed. And if he ends up taking a fight with Tank Davis or Devin Haney, I really don't think he has a shot if he keeps this sort of behavior up. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Let me know if you agree with how Teofimo's acting, or if you think he's great or he always sucked. Whatever you think, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider tapping the like button and subscribing to the channel. I'm making boxing videos every week. And as always, thank you for watching.